The hall shimmered with light, reflecting off the polished crystal floors and tall, sweeping arches. Captain Elias Ward stepped carefully through the grand Sarathi palace, his boots clicking softly, a human sound foreign to the alien courtiers who turned to watch him pass. Despite years of experience in space diplomacy, Elias could not shake a quiet unease. The Sarathi were an ancient race, proud and bound by traditions humans could barely understand. Tonight, those traditions would clash with his instincts in ways he could never have predicted. He was here to attend a ceremony in honor of the Sarathi Queen, a leader whose presence radiated power and authority. Her reputation was whispered across the galaxy, intelligent, calculating, and untouchable. Elias had met leaders before, humans and aliens alike, but there was something different about her. Every gesture, every measured breath seemed part of a ritual, and all eyes followed her movements as though she were the sun itself. Humans were not accustomed to such formality, but Elias had learned to respect the lines drawn by alien culture. Still, nothing in training could prepare him for what would happen. The guests gathered quietly, the tension thick despite the beauty of the chamber. Diplomats, warriors, and officials from dozens of star systems waited for the ceremony to begin. Elias scanned the room, noting subtle glances between the Sarathi nobles. Something was off. His instincts prickled. He had been trained to notice threats, to sense danger before it struck. Something told him tonight would test more than his diplomatic skills. It would test his very survival. The Queen descended the central staircase, her movements precise, measured, almost ethereal. Elias felt a pulse of awe and a knot of worry. He had read about the Sarathi's warrior code, their traditions that demanded honor at all costs. But he had never seen it in action. Now he was standing in the heart of it, a human among a race that saw him as fragile and unpredictable. The room fell silent as she reached the bottom of the staircase, her gaze sweeping over the assembly. It rested briefly on Elias, and he could swear he felt the weight of her scrutiny. For a moment the hall seemed to hold its breath. Then the chaos began. From the shadows near the upper balcony, a figure moved faster than the eye could follow. A weapon, a spear of brilliant energy designed to pierce any armor, shot through the air. Elias saw it at the same instant the Queen did. There was no time to think, no time to plan. His body reacted before his mind could. A burst of motion, driven purely by instinct and training. He dove toward her, catching the deadly spear against his chest. The impact slammed into him like a star collapsing into itself. Pain exploded across his body, a white-hot fury that blurred everything. For a heartbeat, he thought this was the end. He felt the air leave his lungs, his vision narrowing, and yet somehow he clung to consciousness. Around him the hall erupted in screams and confusion. Courtiers fell back, weapons raised, and the Queen's guards converged on the attacker, but Elias could barely register it. He was alive, and yet the pain told him he shouldn't be. The Queen's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and something that resembled awe. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Stop," she commanded. Even her guards froze, obeying her tone. Elias, struggling to rise, realized that the entire chamber was now focused on him, on his reckless act. His chest burned. His limbs trembled, but he could see the Queen unharmed, standing regally as though nothing had threatened her. And in that moment he understood that what he had done was more than instinct. It was a choice, a sacrifice he had made without knowing the consequences. The assassin was swiftly subdued, thrown to the ground by a team of elite Sarathi warriors. The hall slowly regained order, but the energy remained charged, electric with tension. All eyes were now on Elias, and whispers began to rise. Humans were unpredictable, fragile, and yet here he was, standing when he should have been falling. The Sarathi Queen approached him, her movements deliberate. She knelt, placing a hand near his still glowing chest where the weapon had struck. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Elias felt the weight of alien culture press upon him in a way he had never felt before. "You have taken a fatal strike meant for me," she said quietly, her voice almost melodic. By Sarathi law that binds you to me, to my protection, and to my people, you are now my life-bound guardian." Elias staggered backward, disbelief washing over him. I didn't choose this," he gasped, the pain making speech difficult. "I only acted to protect you. I didn't know this law existed." The Queen's gaze softened almost imperceptibly, but her tone remained firm. "Intent matters little. Tradition is law. And by taking this blow, you are bound. You may resist in your mind, human, but your actions have already sealed your place in our world." Elias felt a mixture of fear and awe. He had survived what should have killed him, yet now he faced a bond he could neither understand nor escape. Around him, the Sarathi court watched in silence, some reverent, some skeptical. He had acted without thought, and yet the consequences were enormous. In the moments after taking the fatal strike, Elias had stepped into a world of ancient law, of alien power, and of responsibilities far beyond any human understanding. For the first time in his life, he realized that courage alone might not be enough. Here, in the heart of the Sarathi Palace, among a people older than most human histories, Captain Elias Ward's life had changed forever. Elias woke in a chamber unlike any human hospital he had ever known. The walls glowed faintly, soft light emanating from veins of crystal embedded in the architecture. Sarathi medical technology surrounded him, machines humming gently, translucent, fluid moving in delicate tubes, and alien attendants watching his every movement. His chest throbbed where the energy spear had struck, but he was alive, breathing steadily despite the wound that should have ended him. He tried to sit up, only to be held gently but firmly by one of the attendants. "Rest," the being said in a tone that was firm but not unkind. Its voice carried an accent of vibration, an odd echo that humans found unsettling but strangely calming. Elias nodded, feeling frustration rise alongside exhaustion. He had survived, yet he felt trapped, caught between gratitude and a growing unease about what the Queen had declared. The Sarathi Council entered the room, their robes flowing, faces unreadable. Elias recognized some of the most influential nobles in the empire, war leaders, political advisors, scholars. All of them stopped at the threshold, eyes fixed on him, waiting. The room was heavy with silence, and Elias sensed that nothing he said or did could be casual here. One of the nobles stepped forward, an older Sarathi whose face was scarred in intricate patterns. "Captain Ward," the figure began, voice measured, "you have performed an act of bravery that few could match. Yet by taking the fatal strike meant for the Queen, you have invoked an ancient law. You are bound to her now by tradition and by obligation. Your actions have sealed your place." Elias swallowed hard, struggling to comprehend. I didn't know," he said, voice hoarse. "I didn't know any law. I acted instinctively. I didn't choose to be bound to anyone." The elder's eyes narrowed slightly. "Intent does not nullify tradition. In our culture, the act itself carries meaning beyond thought. By shielding the Queen, you accepted the burden, whether you meant to or not. You are now her life-bound guardian. Your life is tied to hers and hers to yours." Elias shook his head, trying to process it. To a human, it seemed absurd. Laws of such absolute power, bound by ritual and honor, were alien in every way. He had fought battles, survived crises, and negotiated with alien species before, but this was different. Here, even survival was not fully his own. He was entwined in a culture that measured courage, loyalty, and life itself in ways he could barely understand. The Queen entered then, moving silently, her robes brushing the crystalline floor. Her gaze settled on him, unreadable and steady. She knelt beside the bed, placing her hand close to his shoulder, her touch gentle. "You may resist in your mind, human," she said softly, "but your actions have already committed you. You are part of my life, my court, and my people. It is not a punishment. It is a bond." Elias looked at her, trying to reconcile the strange mixture of awe and fear rising within him. He was a soldier, a human trained to follow orders and protect lives. But this was unlike anything he had known. He was expected to obey, to participate in rituals that shaped the Empire's heart, and to accept a role that had existed for centuries, yet he had only survived by instinct. The Queen's attendants began explaining what his duties would be. He would guard her in every public and private moment, accompany her on diplomatic missions, and uphold her safety in any battle or challenge. The bond was not symbolic. It required vigilance, respect, and complete loyalty. Failure was unthinkable. Elias struggled against the weight of it. He had thought his courage in jumping into the spear's path was enough, but now he realized courage alone did not define honor in the Sarathi world. It was ritual, it was tradition, and it was expectation. He was a human among a race that valued precision, history, and sacrifice, and they were watching him closely, measuring whether he could belong. As the day passed, he was shown the palace's strict routines, ceremonial meals, protocol meetings, and rehearsals of gestures and phrases essential to the court. Every misstep drew subtle but sharp criticism from the nobles, who whispered behind their hands, their eyes judging. Yet amid their scrutiny, he noticed a few individuals who observed him differently, curious, perhaps intrigued by the human, who had survived what would have killed even seasoned Sarathi warriors. Elias realized that surviving the fatal strike had made him something more than human in their eyes. He had shown resilience, unpredictability, and sheer stubbornness, traits that the Sarathi secretly admired, even if their traditions had no word for it. It was a dangerous admiration, though. Many nobles remained hostile, seeing him as an intruder who defied the rules, while others began to wonder if this human could change the meaning of courage in their culture. By evening, he was left alone, briefly, staring out of the high window at the alien city below. Towering spires glowed in the dusk, alien life buzzing through streets and skyways. He felt small, fragile, and yet alive. The pain in his chest reminded him that he had survived, against odds, and that his survival was now inseparable from the Queen and her people. Elias understood something essential in that moment. He could fight the traditions, but he could not escape them. The bond was real, the obligations unbreakable, and his place in the Sarathi Empire was permanent. Fear and doubt pressed on him, but beneath it, a spark of determination flared. If he could survive the spear, perhaps he could survive this too. And maybe, just maybe, a human could teach the Sarathi something they had never imagined. The night deepened, and with it, the weight of the future. Captain Elias Ward had taken the fatal strike, and now, by choice or by law, he was bound forever. Days passed, and Captain Elias Ward found himself sinking deeper into the strange rhythms of the Sarathi court. Each morning began with rituals he could barely remember, gestures that seemed meaningless at first, and words that carried weight he could not grasp. The nobles watched him closely, some with thinly veiled disdain, others with curiosity that bordered on fascination. Yet amidst the scrutiny, Elias discovered that his role was more than ceremonial. Every glance, every movement could shape the perception of humans across the empire. The Queen observed him silently, her presence constant, like a shadow that was both comforting and intimidating. She allowed him no time to grow complacent. "You must learn not just to follow, but to anticipate," she told him one morning as they walked through the palace gardens. "A life-bound guardian is not merely a shield. You are part of the rhythm of my life. Miss a beat and the consequences are yours to bear." Elias nodded, trying to absorb her words, knowing they carried centuries of meaning he could barely fathom. The first test came sooner than he expected. Word arrived that a group of insurgents, enemies of the Sarathi, had infiltrated the city. Their goal was not only to attack the Queen, but to destabilize the fragile alliances she had worked decades to build. Elias felt his pulse quicken. His instincts, honed over years of combat and negotiation, screamed that danger was near. He had survived a spear meant to kill a queen. Now he had to ensure she remained safe in a world where every corner hid peril. The palace erupted into controlled chaos. Sarathi guards mobilized, shields clanging, energy blades humming, but the insurgents were cunning. They moved in ways the palace had never anticipated. Elias realized immediately that traditional tactics might fail. He took a deep breath, feeling the scars along his chest throb, a reminder of why he was here and why the Queen's safety depended on him. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the din. "We need to divide them, channel their movement," he instructed, pointing toward corridors the Sarathi guards hesitated to enter. "Use unpredictable patterns. Don't rely only on formations, they won't expect this." The Sarathi generals frowned. Humans rarely challenged protocol, and some openly questioned his audacity. Yet Elias pressed on, guiding the guards with a mix of human intuition and tactical experience. His suggestions were strange, chaotic even, but they worked. The insurgents were forced into narrow passages, their attacks faltering as the palace defenders adapted. Elias moved with them, protecting the Queen as she retreated to a safer chamber, constantly calculating, adjusting, predicting movements that even the Sarathi did not anticipate. When the final insurgent was subdued, the palace was silent again, the echoes of battle fading into the walls. Elias, though exhausted and bruised, felt a sense of quiet triumph. The Queen approached him, her expression unreadable. She placed her hand near his shoulder, the gesture formal but tinged with approval. "You acted beyond instinct," she said softly. "You did not merely follow the rules. You adapted. You used what humans call creativity. Few Sarathi could have done this," the nobles whispered among themselves. Some scowled, unwilling to acknowledge that a human had succeeded where their centuries of training might have failed. Others, those who had been quietly observing, nodded in subtle respect. Elias felt a flicker of pride, tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. His bond to the Queen, formalized by laws he barely understood, demanded more than courage. It demanded mastery over a culture that had survived millennia, and a mind that could think in ways the Sarathi themselves might never have considered. In the days that followed, Elias continued to train with the guards, learning not only their martial techniques but their expectations, their rituals, and their codes of honor. He stumbled repeatedly, making mistakes that would have been unforgivable in a human military context. Yet the Queen allowed him to learn through action. Each failure was a lesson, each success a proof that humans possessed a stubborn resilience the Sarathi had underestimated. During one quiet moment, he found himself alone in a hall overlooking the alien city. He marveled at the soaring towers, the bustling streets, and the alien sky alive with flying vessels. Despite the grandeur, he felt a pang of isolation. Humans were small in the galaxy, fragile compared to the Sarathi in strength, experience, and numbers. And yet, he had survived what should have killed him. He had protected a queen whose very life depended on his presence. Perhaps, he thought, humans were underestimated for a reason. Their unpredictability, their refusal to yield, could change the course of events, even against civilizations older and stronger than their own. The Queen joined him silently, her eyes scanning the horizon. "You have learned quickly," she remarked. "But adaptability is only part of the path. Loyalty, judgment, and understanding the weight of tradition will define whether you remain a life-bound guardian or a liability. You have proven courage, but now you must prove wisdom." Elias nodded, feeling the heavy responsibility settle on his shoulders. Courage had saved the Queen once, but the bond they shared demanded far more than bravery. He had to become part of her world, navigate its complexities, and find a place where humanity's strengths could complement the Sarathi's traditions rather than clash with them. He clenched his fists, looking out at the city beneath the alien sky. For the first time, Elias felt the quiet certainty that humans were not merely survivors. They were challengers, innovators, and, when necessary, protectors in ways the galaxy had never imagined. And if he could endure this, if he could, adapt, perhaps he could become more than a human soldier. Perhaps he could become a symbol of what humanity was truly capable of. The palace was quiet, but Elias knew that the calm was dangerous. The previous attack had been only a warning, a test of his instincts and adaptability. He could feel it in the way the Queen's guards moved with tension, in the hushed conversations. among the nobles and in the subtle shifts in the city below. The Sarathi Empire had enemies, and those enemies were not idle. Something larger was coming, something that would test not just his courage but his understanding of this alien world he had been bound to. Reports arrived by the hour. Intelligence teams scoured the city and the outer settlements. Small attacks had begun, sabotage at supply depots, whispers of rebellion among the lesser nobles, and evidence of spies hidden in plain sight. Elias listened carefully as the Queen's advisors spoke, their words precise, their meanings layered. He realized that the Sarathi were facing a coordinated strategy designed to destabilize them, not just to harm the Queen. And in the center of it all, he could feel the shadow of a single purpose: to destroy her and everyone who supported her, including him. The Queen approached him in the command hall, her robes flowing like liquid silk over the polished floor. She had a serious look, unusual for someone who usually maintained calm perfection. "Captain Ward," she said, "you have adapted well, but these events are not accidents. They are calculated. The enemy has grown bold, and they now know your presence is a threat to their plans. They will come again, and we must be ready." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle on him. This was no longer a test of reaction or instinct. It was a battle of strategy, and he would have to think in ways the Sarathi had never seen from a human. He reviewed the palace layouts in his mind, considered the possible routes the attackers could use, and began to imagine solutions that were unconventional, risky, but potentially effective. In the following days, Elias worked alongside the Queen's generals, studying the movements of the city's defense and training the guards. In unexpected maneuvers, he showed them how to exploit spaces the Sarathi had never considered tactical, how to use unpredictability to their advantage, and how to anticipate enemy patterns by thinking like humans rather than like Sarathi warriors. Some generals bristled at his methods, arguing that tradition could not be ignored. Others watched silently, curiosity and doubt battling in their expressions. Despite the tensions, the Queen supported him. "The enemy expects perfection from us," she said one evening, as they oversaw a training exercise. "Perfection is predictable. We must show them something they cannot anticipate. That is why he stands at my side." Her eyes met his, a silent acknowledgement that the weight of her trust rested on his shoulders. Elias felt a mixture of pride and fear. He had survived one deadly strike, but the next challenge would not be so simple. The warning came sooner than anyone expected. A fleet of enemy ships appeared at the edge of Sarathi space, their movements precise, calculated, and clearly designed to intimidate. Their ships were faster than most Sarathi vessels, their weaponry advanced, and their intent unmistakable. They were not coming for negotiation, they were coming for war. The Queen called an emergency council, and the tension in the room was nearly suffocating. Every noble, every general, and every soldier understood the stakes. Failure meant death, not just for the Queen but for the entire empire. Elias felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came before battle. Unlike the Sarathi, who were trained to wait and execute, he relied on instinct, on flexibility, and on the stubborn human trait of refusing to yield even when the odds were impossible. He began to outline strategies to the generals, combining Sarathi discipline with human unpredictability. The room erupted in argument. Nobles doubted, advisors debated, and generals scowled, but the Queen listened in silence. She did not dismiss him. She had chosen to trust a human, and that trust carried more weight than the opinions of centuries of Sarathi experience. The preparations took every waking hour. The city's defenses were reinforced, patrols adjusted to unconventional schedules, and every possible entry point examined for weakness. Elias trained alongside the guards, teaching them maneuvers that were messy, unconventional, and difficult, yet effective. Slowly, resistance turned into understanding. A few warriors began to see that this human, with all his flaws, offered something they could not ignore: adaptability and courage that did not conform to any rule, yet worked better than rules alone. By the time the enemy fleet closed the distance, the city was ready, but not in the way anyone had expected. They had been prepared for a traditional defense, a line of warriors holding the perimeter and following centuries of protocol. Instead, they would face unpredictability, traps born of instinct and quick thinking, and a force willing to bend tradition to achieve victory. Elias felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders, but also the familiar thrill of challenge. He glanced at the Queen, who met his gaze with calm determination. They had survived attempts before, but this would be different. The enemy was stronger, faster, and more cunning than anything they had faced. Yet for the first time, Elias believed that humanity's stubbornness, creativity, and refusal to surrender could make a difference, not just for him, but for the empire he was now bound to protect. As the enemy ships descended upon the city, Elias tightened his fists. He had learned the Scifi ways, adapted them, and now had the chance to prove that one human could change the outcome of a battle that would define the future of an entire civilization. The weight of the empire pressed down on him, but he did not flinch. He would face this challenge as he had faced the spear, and he would not fail. The sky above the Scifi capital burned with light as the enemy fleet descended. Ships larger than anything Elias had ever seen filled the horizon, their weapons glinting in the alien sun. Sirens echoed through the city, alarms clanging across the crystal towers calling soldiers to their posts. Elias stood beside the Queen in the command chamber, his hands clenched, mind racing. He had prepared the defenses, trained the guards, and guided the generals, but now the moment of truth had arrived. The Queen's voice cut through the tension, calm but commanding. "Captain Ward, you lead the first response. Use the city's terrain. Remember what you have taught them." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. The first wave of enemy forces was approaching, and every decision he made would decide who lived and who died. He moved swiftly through the city streets with the life-bound guard at his side, directing troops with human instinct combined with Scifi strategy. Narrow alleys were used as choke points. Rooftops became vantage points. Energy traps were set in patterns no traditional Scifi mind would have devised. The insurgents had calculated the Empire's routines, but Elias had rewritten them in hours, turning the city into a maze that only humans and Scifi who thought like humans could navigate. The first wave hit with terrifying force. Enemy ships unleashed a barrage of energy, shattering barriers and sending sparks raining over the streets. Scifi warriors fought valiantly, their movements precise, but the enemy was relentless. Elias darted from position to position, guiding reinforcements, improvising when plans failed, and making split-second decisions that confused the attackers. His unpredictability was now an advantage. Where the enemy expected rigid formations, they found chaos. Where they expected hesitation, they found human resolve. Despite the chaos, he never let the Queen out of sight. She moved with grace, issuing commands and maintaining authority. But Elias was always near, intercepting threats before they reached her, adapting strategies in real time. Soldiers and nobles alike began to recognize a new form of leadership, one that combined the Scifi discipline with human flexibility. Murmurs of admiration spread through the ranks, though some nobles still bristled at his methods. Hours passed, and the battle escalated. The enemy brought forward massive assault squads, their speed and technology challenging everything the Scifi had mastered. Elias realized the fight could not be won with conventional tactics alone. He devised a daring maneuver, luring the enemy into a narrow canyon outside the city and forcing their ships to split, making them vulnerable to coordinated strikes. It was risky, almost reckless, but he had seen such improvisation work before, and now the lives of the Queen and thousands of soldiers depended on it. The Queen watched, her eyes sharp as she saw the plan unfold. She understood the danger and, yet allowed him the freedom to act. "You do not fear the impossible," she said quietly. "That is why humans survive where others might fall." Elias glanced at her, absorbing the weight of her words. Fear was present, but he did not allow it to control him. There was no time. There was only action, strategy, and survival. As the enemy fell into the canyon trap, The city's forces struck with precision, cutting off retreat and neutralizing the threat. Yet even as one wave was repelled, another approached, larger and more organized. The enemy commander had realized the humans and Scifi were learning, adapting, and now sought to crush them with sheer numbers and firepower. Elias felt exhaustion press against him, but he pushed it aside. There was no room for weakness. Not now, not when so much was at stake. In the heat of battle, a massive enemy warship descended upon the city, its energy cannons charging. The Scifi forces hesitated, unsure how to engage such a powerful weapon. Elias stepped forward, his mind racing. "We cannot fight it head-on," he shouted over the roar of combat. "We need to divide their attention, create openings. I will lead a strike team inside. Follow my lead, and watch each other's backs." The Queen's eyes met his for a brief moment, a silent understanding passing between them. She nodded. "Go, human. Lead them, but return to me." Elias gathered his team, combining elite Scifi warriors and human soldiers. The streets became a battlefield of shadows and light as they advanced toward the warship, dodging energy blasts and enemy patrols. His experience, his stubbornness, and his refusal to yield became their greatest weapon. Every decision, every move, demonstrated the value of human ingenuity in a world that had once doubted it. As they closed in on the ship, Elias realized this was the moment that would define him, the Queen, and the future of the Empire. He was no longer just a soldier. He was the life-bound guardian, a bridge between species, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when courage met necessity. And though the path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and possibly fatal, he knew one truth. Humans did not surrender, not ever. The roar of engines and the flash of energy blasts filled the city as the enemy warship loomed above. Its massive form blocked out the alien sun, casting a shadow that chilled every Scifi soldier who looked up. Elias Ward led his strike team, through the chaos navigating streets torn apart by battle. Each corner held danger, each shadow a potential ambush. The stakes had never been higher. The Queen's life, the city, and the future of two civilizations depended on their success. Elias felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him like a star collapsing. He had trained, planned, and fought alongside the Scifi, but nothing could fully prepare him for this moment. The enemy was relentless, their tactics precise, their determination ruthless. He glanced at his team, Scifi warriors who had once doubted him, now trusting his instincts completely, following his human strategies with tense obedience. Their survival depended on his ability to think faster than the enemy, to anticipate threats no one else could see. The team reached the outskirts of the city, where the warship had begun its assault on the defensive towers. Energy blasts tore through walls and spires, sending debris raining down. Elias knew they could not confront the ship directly. Its shields and weapons were too powerful. They needed to infiltrate it, strike at its core, and disable it from within. He drew a deep breath, feeling the scars along his chest throb, a reminder of the first time he had faced death for the Queen. It was no longer a memory. It was a calling, a measure of his bond. "Move quickly," he ordered, leading his team through tunnels beneath the city, ancient pathways the Scifi rarely used. "We have one chance, distraction and precision, every second counts." The Scifi warriors adjusted their pace, their faces tense but determined. They had come to understand something Elias had long known. Fear did not control humans. Adaptation and stubbornness did. As they approached the warship's docking area, enemy patrols closed in. Elias signaled, splitting his team to create confusion. He moved with a combination of agility and determination, dodging energy blasts and neutralizing threats with calculated strikes. The Scifi soldiers followed his lead, executing maneuvers that were unconventional, dangerous, and effective. Together they fought as one, a hybrid force that combined human unpredictability with Scifi precision. They reached the core chamber of the warship, a vast hall filled with pulsing energy conduits and control panels glowing in alien symbols. The enemy commander awaited them, a towering figure armed with weapons designed to kill a dozen warriors at once. Elias did not hesitate. He lunged forward, drawing the commander's attention, while his team disabled the energy systems and sabotaged the warship's engines. Blasts of energy erupted around him, scorching the floor, shattering walls. Pain stabbed through his body, each movement a struggle, but he pressed on, driven by instinct, courage, and the unbreakable bond with the Queen. A massive strike caught him across the chest, sending him sprawling. He gritted his teeth, refusing to yield. His human stubbornness, the same trait that had kept him alive against the first fatal strike, now carried him through this battlefield. He rose, limping, but unbroken, and faced the commander again. Every move, every feint was a gamble, but it worked. The enemy faltered, distracted by the chaos his team had sown. The energy conduits overloaded, sparks flying as the warship began to collapse from within. Elias signaled his team to retreat. They raced back through the tunnels, dodging falling debris and bursts of fire. Behind them, the warship erupted in a controlled explosion, its destructive power neutralized before it could destroy the city. The battle was won, but the cost was visible in every bruised and exhausted face around him. When the dust settled, Elias staggered to the palace courtyard, the city still standing but scarred by the conflict. The Queen approached him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and respect. She placed a hand near his shoulder, the gesture formal yet warm. "You have done what no Sarathi could have done alone," she said. "You have shown courage, strategy, and a will to endure that surpasses expectation. You are not just my life-bound guardian. You are the shield of the Empire." Elias felt the weight of her words settle upon him, a mixture of pride and exhaustion. He had survived again, not by luck, but by combining human creativity, resilience, and sheer determination with Sarathi tradition. For the first time, he realized the full meaning of his bond. It was not merely protection, but partnership. His life and the Queen's were intertwined, and together they had altered the course of an empire. The nobles and warriors gathered around, some still wary, others openly admiring. The tales of his bravery spread quickly, their whispers carrying through the city. Humans, they began to see, were not weak, fragile, or chaotic. They were adaptable, relentless, and capable of acts that even the most disciplined Sarathi could not predict. Elias had proven it, and the Empire had witnessed it firsthand. As the night fell, the city glowed under the alien sky, scarred but alive. Elias leaned against a wall, chest still aching from the battle, and looked toward the Queen. She stood tall, a symbol of endurance and leadership, and he realized something profound. His life had changed forever. He had become more than a soldier. He had become a bridge between species, a living example of humanity's strength, courage, and unwavering resolve. And as he gazed at the stars above, Elias understood that the bond he had once resisted was now his honor, his duty, and his purpose. Humans could endure, humans could adapt, and humans could change the course of history, even when bound by alien tradition. The city was quiet now, the echoes of battle replaced by the soft hum of rebuilding. Debris had been cleared, energy fields repaired, and patrols returned to their positions. The Sarathi citizens moved through the streets cautiously, casting wary but hopeful glances at the sky. The enemy fleet had been driven away, the warship destroyed, and the Empire had survived against overwhelming odds. Yet in the palace, the weight of what had transpired pressed on everyone's minds. Elias Ward sat in a quiet chamber, his body still bruised and aching from the battle. His chest, scarred and tender from the spear and the recent fight, reminded him of the cost he had paid. He had survived what should have killed him twice, first by instinct, then by ingenuity and sheer will. Now the realization settled in. His life was no longer his own. He was bound to the Queen, and through her, to the Sarathi Empire. What had once seemed a burden now felt like an honor. The Queen entered the chamber, her robes flowing like liquid, silver across the floor. She paused when she saw him, her expression unreadable for a moment before softening. She extended a hand, a gesture both ceremonial and personal. "You have done more than survive, human," she said. "You have defended this empire, protected my life, and shown a courage and wisdom that surpasses expectation. You are not merely a soldier, you are my life-bound guardian, and through you, humanity has proven its place among the stars." Elias rose slowly, feeling the ache in his muscles and the lingering pain in his chest. He met her gaze steadily, humbled but proud. "I only did what anyone would have done," he said quietly. "I protected you because I could. I didn't think about tradition or law. I just acted." The Queen's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. "Perhaps that is why your people are remarkable. You act with instinct, with resolve, and without fear. Your actions change what others see as impossible. That is why you survived. That is why you are bound to me." Word of Elias' deeds had spread quickly through the palace and the city. Nobles who had once doubted him now bowed in respect. Soldiers whispered his name with admiration, sharing tales of how a human had led them through a battle no Sarathi could have survived alone. The Queen called a council to formally recognize his achievements. Standing before the nobles, she declared, "Captain Elias Ward is not only my life-bound guardian, but the first human champion of the Sarathi Empire. His courage and wisdom honor both our peoples and ensure that humanity has a permanent place in our history." The council erupted in murmurs, some skeptical, some awed, but none could deny the truth of the words. Elias felt a surge of emotion, relief, pride, and a quiet satisfaction. He had survived. He had protected the Queen, and he had shown that humans were not merely fragile creatures but beings capable of courage, adaptability, and greatness in ways even the oldest civilizations could not have imagined. In the following days, the palace slowly returned to normal. Elias trained the guards, shared his knowledge of human strategies, and worked with the Queen to ensure the city remained protected. He became a symbol not only of survival, but of partnership between humans and the Sarathi. Where once there had been doubt, there was now respect, curiosity, and hope for the future. During a quiet evening, Elias and the Queen walked together through the palace gardens. The alien plants glowed softly in the twilight, and the city stretched beyond them, scarred but thriving. The Queen spoke quietly, almost as if thinking aloud. "Your bond with me has changed more than just protocol. You have altered the way our people see courage and loyalty. You have reminded us that survival and strength are not always measured by tradition alone." Elias nodded, feeling a warmth he had never expected from an alien culture. "I have learned much as well," he admitted, "about patience, about honor, and about how a people can endure for centuries through tradition. I didn't know I could be a part of something so vast." The Queen turned to him, eyes steady. "You are part of it now, human. Your actions will be remembered, your name honored, and your life intertwined with ours. The bond is permanent, but it is not a chain. It is a bridge. Through you, humanity has found its place among the stars. Through you, the Sarathi have seen what courage truly is." Elias looked at the city beneath the alien sky, reflecting on the journey he had taken. He had leapt into a fatal strike, defying death instinctively. He had faced enemies, learned a foreign culture, and led warriors of another species to victory. And now he understood that humans were more than survivors. They were innovators, protectors, and symbols of hope. The sun set, casting long shadows across the palace. Elias felt the weight of his bond, but it no longer pressed down as a burden. Instead, it felt like purpose, responsibility, and honor combined. He had become more than a soldier. He had become a bridge between civilizations, a living testament to what humanity could achieve. And as the stars blinked into existence over the Sarathi city, Elias knew one truth with absolute clarity. He had taken the fatal strike, and in doing so, he had changed the future, not just for himself or the Queen, but for two species who would now face the galaxy together, united by courage, loyalty, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The bond would endure forever, And so would the legacy of one human who refused to yield.